Hello, everybody. Sorry about the hiatus. I know I've been gone for a little bit, but I have come back with the goal of bringing you a very cool build that you can play with all of your friends. It is the Vanguard Paladin, which is very similar to the Fighter Paladin, but the big difference and why I say you can play it with all of your friends is the fact that the Vanguard Paladin is defensive and it is support-oriented. It's a little bit different than Fighter Vanguard. If you have had the chance to play my Fighter Vanguard or seen me on stream, you'll know I crit people in the face for like 25,000 damage, and it's a really fun time. You kill people. It's amazing. It's awesome. But one of the big core issues with the Fighter Vanguard is that you have pretty much no way to support your team. You don't have any defensive buffs, defensive spells, heals. Raising Dead is kind of a challenge, especially if you're playing on a first life character without a lot of use magic device. It just becomes a big hassle, and it is fun to play. But again, you don't have the ability to heal yourself either, which makes soloing kind of not an option, and it's really frustrating in that regard, especially if it's like your first character that you are playing. Which is why I wanted to talk to you guys about Paladin Vanguard, which is the complete opposite. Paladin Vanguard has the magic of Lay on Hands, being able to heal itself, Cure Spells, being able to heal itself, and then in the epics, Rejuvenation Cocoon all day for lots of fantastic healing. Granted, it does slow down a little bit once you get into Reaper mode because Lay on Hands doesn't scale quite as hard as the Aasimar Healing Hands for a reason I don't entirely understand. But yeah, the healing is still pretty good, and as a Paladin you also have really high saves, defensive capability. This Paladin build also is a little bit different than Fighter because it actually uses its defensive tree. The Fighter Stalwart Defender tree doesn't really do a lot for damage, but the Paladin Sacred Defender tree also doesn't do a lot for damage, but it gives you so much utility you pretty much don't want to go around it. You got to go through that tree just to make sure your character can actually stay alive. The Fighter spends a lot of their points in the Kensai tree, and realistically it's a Kensai with a little bit of Vanguard going on. But for the Paladin, the Knight of the Chalice tree, it doesn't really have anything that holds for the Paladin other than the Divine Might to allow you to get your strength. So instead, you've spent a lot of points in Vanguard, and you have a lot of free points for your Sacred Defender, which is where you get your 20% extra health, and then if you want, you can also get the Resurrection from the Dead, and you can get the move speed. Now, one of the things that's interesting about Paladin Vanguard is it has no real restriction on race, at least not right now, simply because with the new items coming out in Sharn, and the fact that you can kind of get any of the melee sets to work with any single armor type, it's not really a problem. Try to make sure all that stuff is working together and that your character, has a specific race. Whereas right now, or at least previously, you'd want to be a Warforged to make sure you can get the docent going. So how different is Paladin Vanguard from Fighter Vanguard? Well, the biggest thing that you're going to notice is damage. In the early game, you kind of don't notice a difference. In fact, it's going to be a lot easier because Lay on Hands is such a beast, as well as Smite Evil giving you that awesome burst damage where you just slam a guy in the face, take out a big chunk of health, and then get to walk away completely unscathed. That's really awesome and really good, but then you get to endgame. And in the endgame, that's when you start to slow down a little bit on damage, and that's where Fighter really starts to take off. Fighter has Deadly Strike for a guaranteed critical hit, as well as Executioner's Strike for that sweet execute, and Opportunity Attack as another very high W melee attack that gives melee power. Combining those three things, you're always pressing buttons that's going to be doing additional damage to the enemy and also giving you some type of offensive buff or finisher. Paladin doesn't really have that. On top of that, the Fighter gets more base damage, more base hit chance, and easier access to a higher strength, which means that Paladin kind of lags behind a little bit on some of the damage and hit chance, and it starts to become very noticeable when you compare it to all the melee power that you get out of Kensai. Fighter gets 40 melee power out of Kensai, and Paladin gets 10. So you're losing out on good attacks, and you're losing out on the melee power. Overall, Paladin is going to do 2/3 the damage of Fighter. It's a big cut, and you can't make those two things even. However, the Paladin, while it does lose out a little bit on damage, is significantly tankier and is capable of soloing things on Reaper mode that the Fighter absolutely cannot, being able to simply walk into quests on Sharn, Reaper 2 or Reaper 3, and just start fighting its way through, since you can have access to Rejuvenation Cocoon, or Lay on Hands, or many other different options for healing. Now, the playstyle is actually very similar. Get in the middle of stuff, Dire Charge, then Shield Charge, but the Paladin also takes Shield Rush, which allows you to charge through enemies and kind of knock them all over. It's a very powerful effect. That's something that I never really used on Fighter because you're not going to give up the good stuff on Kensai. But with Paladin, you don't really have any other options. There's nothing to take. So you just take Shield Rush, and you realize, hey, this skill is really cool. I get to knock down every single person in a line, do a really high amount of damage because it's plus 6W. And when you realize how much damage plus 6W means for your shield, when your shield's base damage is 2d10 plus 10, yeah, it is a lot. you're essentially hitting somebody with a 1200 base damage weapon. 1200 base damage. That is crazy. So when you actually critically strike stuff with a ×4, ×5 critical, depending on what exactly you're using, yeah, it hurts a lot. I've been actually able to land 30,000 damage crits on my Paladin, which is pretty exciting, but only when using Shield Rush. It's very specific, but it does sometimes happen, which is super cool to see. Shield Rush is also nice because it lets you kind of run around real fast, dash over top of gaps. So it's really, really fun to play in a totally different way than Fighter Vanguard. Paladin Vanguard, way more defensive, way more supportive, whereas Fighter Vanguard is way more about just raw killing power. The Paladin has a much easier time during the leveling process, especially since once you hit level 8, you can automatically use Raise Dead Scrolls. Even if you don't have the spell added to your list, it technically counts as the level 2 Paladin spell, so you can just throw them with a 100% success rate, which makes it very, very good for the leveling process. All in all, the two classes are just very different. They perform a similar role. Fighter does, of course, a lot more damage, but the Paladin is where it's at for that kind of utility and defense, and it's one of the reasons I enjoy it so much. Now, I'm looking forward to getting the chance to test it with some of the new Sharn gear. I didn't have a chance to do that yet because it is difficult to acquire all the Sharn gear that I need for my build. It's difficult to track down where exactly all the stats are for all the items and how they've changed since Lamania. And apparently Sanctified Fervor, the new filigree for Paladins specifically, is the rarest filigree on Earth, and I have basically found none. So I can't test that out. Anyways, I will leave it up to me to show you guys how to build this character and make your own Vanguard Paladin. Alright, so I wanted to get into the bulk of this and explain how you build this character, how you play it, and kind of what makes Vanguard Paladin work as opposed to Fighter Vanguard to really dig into the character build. As you can see here, I actually do have a Warhammer in my hand. I am using a Warhammer on this build. I don't think it's optimal, and I will put the optimal weapon list. I think Longsword is probably the best way to go, but for all intents and purposes, this character that I played did use a Warhammer, and it was good enough. To start off and go through some of the base character stats, my stats aren't crazy impressive. I only have a 75 charisma, 68 strength, which doesn't sound super good, but one of the benefits of being a paladin is you press a single button, and then I have 91 strength now, because you get to add your charisma as insightful strength, thanks to Divine Might. So I actually have decently high stats. When I'm in Reaper mode, I get an additional 4 charisma. I can also get extra charisma from Yugoloth potions. So with the Yugoloth potions, just chugging this one back here, and then also being able to throw on Tensor's Transformation whenever I feel like it, give myself extra strength. I can press the Divine Might, now I'm up to 96 inside Reaper. With all my potions running, I'm about 106 strength. And it can still go higher from there. I actually haven't maxed out all my character stats, but it's not in here or there. So this character is a pure Paladin, Tiefling. I should actually turn on some of my buffs like Sacred Defense. I actually do use Sacred Defense, unlike the Fighter, which doesn't use the Stalwart Defender tree. You do need to use Sacred Defense on Paladin because you don't have the feats to be able to actually get epic defensive fighting rolling. As far as feats or skills during leveling, the only skills I used were Intimidate, Diplomacy, and Use Magic Device. You don't really need Intimidate, and because of the charisma that you have, you don't really need to use Magic Device either. Like, I just have so much straight Use Magic Device. However, during the leveling process, it's really useful to have that little extra bump, so I did take that. Intimidate, of course, is pretty standard. There's situations where someone needs to get out of a pinch, so you want to use Intimidate. And then Diplomacy, it's just nice to have. If I was to do this again, I probably would have put points into Haggle or the new Concentration, which is really nice, so you can actually avoid picking up Quicken as a feat, but I did take Quicken, so I don't worry about that. The feats that I went going up the actual tree, so I did take some martial feats. Of course, I took Knight's Training, Precision, and Improved Critical Bludgeoning because I am using Warhammers. And then on top of that, I also spent some deity feats as well. So I took Child or Follower of Onatar, so you get Follower of Onatar for free. And then I took Child of Onatar for an extra +2 to hit and damage with Warhammers, and Beloved of Onatar for another +2 to hit and damage with Warhammers. Pretty good. Good offensive stats. I didn't really take many defensive feats. I did take Shield Mastery and Improved Shield Mastery, but you know, that's fine. And then of course I took Quicken as well. And then when it comes to epic feats, I did take Perfect 2-Weapon Fighting because it gives you 5% double strike, so it's very, very good. I did take Dire Charge, and I believe, did I take Pierce Adamantine? I did take Pierce Adamantine. It was either that or Toughness, and I decided Pierce Adamantine would be a little bit better. I went with Sign of Arborea because it's pretty much the best thing you can do on the character like this, and I took Epic Defensive Fighting as well and Overwhelming Critical, so pretty standard melee feats. As far as spells, one of the best parts about going pure Paladin is you get access to a lot of good spells. So I have True Resurrection, and you could have Raise Dead if you want, but I figure these two are good enough, and especially when Quickened, it gets you out of a pinch. And then you have the good stuff, Zeal, Holy Sword, and then Death Ward in case somebody happens to need it. Now let's talk about enhancements. It's one of the bread and butters of this character, and where it's going to differ a lot from Fighter and be very, very different. You actually put points in Sacred Defender, which is kind of strange. You also take Tier 5 in Vanguard. So why do you do this? There's a couple of reasons. One of the big reasons is because Paladin doesn't have the amazing Kensai tree. You have Knight of the Chalice, and Knight of the Chalice is fine, but it's not quite the same thing. It doesn't have that same, like, oomph. So, really, you don't want any of the T5s in Knight of the Chalice. They don't really benefit your Vanguard stuff in any capacity. Instead, the only thing you really want is Divine Might, because Divine Might gives you a crazy amount of strength based on your Charisma. While it is expensive, it is very, very worth it, as I'm sure you saw me pressing one button and jumping up like 30 points of strength is pretty cool. And then you also get Slayer of Evil 2 here, which gives you that Ghost Touch effect on all your weapons. The actual melee power light damage thing doesn't really matter. It's mostly just the Ghost Touch effect. It just saves you like item slots later. If you can fit in Ghostly, then you don't need to take this. But, it's only recovering 1 point. It's not a big deal. Outside of that, in Vanguard tree, it's pretty standard. Take all the cores, take the good stuff like the damage, take your Stunning Shield, extra shield threat range. We do use Shield Charge, and I actually took Shield Rush. So the Tier 5s, you're going Vanguard because the Tier 5s in Knight of Chalice are bad, and you don't really want the Tier 5s in Sacred Defender. You want Vanguard, and you don't even have enough points to go Tier 5 in Sacred Defender anyway, because of what you need to spend in Knight of the Chalice. So we went with Vanguard. A couple things that are good. Disorienting Smash means you don't need to be an Azamar to get vulnerability proccing, or have any special vulnerability weapons. The shield will do it on its own, which is very cool. 10 melee power is good from Armored Strength. It's not great. Fighter gets 20 for 1 point, you get 10 for 2 points, so it's not great, but it's fine. And then, of course, you have Shield Rush. This is surprisingly useful. Having an additional knockdown is very, very powerful on a character like this, so being able to use the Stunning Shield as well as the Shield Rush as well as Dire Charge, very, very useful for a character like this. And your Shield Champion stun does work pretty often because you are based off of strength, so it works. It's pretty fun to play. So you take all the good stuff in Vanguard, pretty standard. Sacred Defender, the reason why you go in here is because you want to get the extra life. You need 20% life from this tree right here, or else you're going to die a lot. Now, you have the option to go with Strength or Constitution. I was originally going with Constitution, but then when I got to the point where I was as tanky as I wanted to be, I decided to swap this into Strength bonus. I think the Strength bonus is going to provide a better boost to your defensive stats overall. Other than that, I did take Armored Max Dex bonus here, so I could get a even higher Max Dex on my armor for additional dodge chance. And then you want to make sure you take Redemption, which gives you the Resurrection and True Resurrection as part of your Paladin spell list. Plus move speed, can't go wrong with move speed. And then I had some points, and I just put them into Tiefling. It's not really useful. You get to knock some guys down every once in a while, but the Tiefling tree is not really good for tanks, or at least not offensive melee characters. Scorch is cool, some of the stuff is cool, but if you're playing an offensive melee, you don't really want to be a Tiefling. I just wanted a Tiefling life, so I figured it would work here. As far as equipment goes, this is kind of like the finalized equipment for this character pre-Sharn. I have some of the Sharn stuff, but I haven't done the math and trying to figure out exactly what I would use. And a lot of the reasons because it's too complicated. Trying to figure out what the actual updated item list is. It's very different than the one that was posted on the Mania, so I'd have to actually go through the item list and make a lot of decisions. So this is going to be the pre-Sharn gear. I don't know if I'll have a Sharn gear update. It's going to take me a while to actually put all the pieces together. But for pre-Sharn, which has got me I've done a full saga on Reaper 5, no problem with the group. I was doing lots of damage, top of the kill meter, so this character does do some decent damage. The gear that I'm using, I've got the precision lenses on my goggles. Headset, I'm using the Executioner's Helm. It has Slave Lord's Might, but you don't need Slave Lord's Might on this character because you only use, well, I guess you use 2 Slave Lord's pieces. But I could craft Slave Lord's Might on here. Oh, I did. There you go. But I don't have a 3rd Slave Lord's piece, so it doesn't matter. Necklace, the Warden Scribe Pendant, because you are actually using the Crypt Raider set on this character, which is a little out of the ordinary. You're using Crypt Raider set on this character, which is a little out of the ordinary, but I am actually using it since it gives you threat reduction, which you need with your defensive stance, bonus to saves, which you don't care about, but +5 to hit and damage is very, very noticeable, and the melee power is just nice to have. Then we go with the Cursebane Focus because you have to use it for the Crypt Raider set. Now the other option is the Blood Rage Chrism, but it doesn't really give anything, and this actually gives the magical resistance rating that you don't have anywhere else, as well as 16 to spell saves, so you basically don't fail against spells, which is kind of cool. Mantle of Fury is very important to this build because it gives Constitution, which is already taken here, but most importantly, it gives Dodge 19. Now, I'm actually wearing a medium armor set, the Coat of the Traveler, on this character, because it gives me a max dexterity bonus of 10. And then, with the maximum dexterity bonus of 10, plus the ship bonuses that I have, and by taking the extra 3 maximum dexterity bonus right here, and some maximum dexterity bonus right here, those two things combined give me that nice, juicy 16, which means now my dodge chance is kind of hard to read, but my dodge chance is 16%. So I have blurriness, incorporeality, 133 armor class, as well as 16% dodge for all my layered defenses, trying to get it as high as possible. Plus, this gives me double strike, which is nice. I don't have the molten silver gauntlets, so I do need double strike somewhere, and this is nice to have. For my belt, I went with the animated rope, which also gives dodge, but the biggest reason I just needed to fit deception in here somewhere, and this doesn't give double strike, so I need to have the double strike up here. But yeah, the deception is what I wanted, as well as diversion to reduce my melee threat again, and some mana as well. 5 rings to give you trip and accuracy. Accuracy is really all that matters. Quality strength as well, but accuracy and quality strength are kind of the keys. I used Gauntlets of the Inner Arcanum to give myself charisma, quality charisma, and wizardry, which is really nice. Actually, with 400 wizardry, I have 1,000 spell points, so I don't have a lot of mana, but it works really well for this character. Boots, soft sole slippers to get that insightful charisma 9, just to fill out that section. Then we use the band of insightful commands because it gives quality deadly and insightful accuracy. Conveniently also gives intimidate. You don't need that, but it's fine. I'm using the braces of the fallen hero for my strength item, as well as insightful constitution, as well as stunning. So it's a good combination of things. It gives me some more physical resistance rating, as I mentioned, the Coat of the Traveler. And then the weapon I'm using right now is the legendary Echo of Whelm. If I had the patience and the schism shards, I would upgrade this, but I can't. So that is what I'm using for now. It's a pretty good weapon. It just does a bunch of damage. The legendary Whelming Shockwave is completely worthless. It goes off all the time, and it does about 20 damage at my level range, so it's completely worthless. I would never recommend using it. But the Bone Splitter effect, where when you roll a 20, it does an additional extra damage and slows guys, is pretty nice because it stops people from chasing you down. I also slotted a Devotion Ruby in here because I do actually use Rejuvenation Cocoon. And then finally for the shield, we're using the legendary Best Defense. There's 2 reasons for this. Number 1, it is a large shield, so it doesn't have any maximum dexterity bonus, which allows me to get my full dodge, so I can't actually dodge stuff. And the other reason is that this actually gives 31% increased shield bash chance, which means I don't need to put points into shield to the face, so I can save 2 enhancement points here, and with 10%, 20%, and 30% here, that gives me 61% chance to have my shield bash attacks go off, so I pretty much am always getting my shield bash attacks slamming out and hitting people in the face. The last thing I want to cover is Epic Destinies. This character is running around in Legendary Dreadnought because, of course, you get Pulverizer, which is really good. The feats, the things I decided to twist, of course, you can see here. Sense Weakness, because you stun stuff all the time. Extra Lay on Hands, because I really like the defensive capability of Lay on Hands. I wish Lay on Hands scaled like Aasimar Lay on Hands all the way to level 30, but you can't have everything. Legendary Shield Mastery for the 15 physical resistance and 7% double strike. And then, of course, Rejuvenation Cocoon. So very cool stuff. This is really good. Legendary Shield Mastery is fantastic. It's really, really useful effect. Essentially, that's how I built my character. The kind of way obviously the play style, get in there, hit stuff. You play pretty much the same as the fighter. You're a little bit limited. Oh, I didn't talk filigree. Right now, I'm running Prowess, which is pretty simple. I want to do some tests to see if the Righteous Fervor is better, but Righteous Fervor is super rare. So far, if I go down to my Fervor, I have 1, or Sanctified Fervor. 1 filigree. When I get all of them, I will test it, but it takes some time to get all of them, so we will see how that goes. Anyway, that's pretty much the build. That is how you put the character together and why I made those decisions that I made. If I was to redo this and make it a little bit better, I would be an Aasimar, for sure, and I would go Fallen Aasimar. I would use long swords and see if I can get Soul Razor, because that is a much more powerful weapon than the weapon that I am currently using. And then other than that, it would be pretty much the same. I would probably end up potentially taking some points out somewhere so I could spend more points in the Tiefling tree. I might even drop the strength here, or not Tiefling, the Aasimar tree, so that I could actually get the Ascendant Bond, and then I would lose out on the Raised Dead to get a little bit more damage. But this character does enough damage. It's about, I would say, 65% of the damage of the fighter build, so you're losing a huge chunk of damage, about a third of the damage. But the benefit is that you can get a little bit of a burst from Ontar's Forge on your damage that you can't get other places. When Sanctified Fervor becomes a thing, you can get some extra melee power from Smite Evil that'll put you over top of Fighter. But the biggest thing is utility. Right away, you can just like snap resurrect people. You can snap heal people and say, hey, you're not dead right now. And that is very, very useful utility, which I don't pass up. So I like that about this character. Plus, you're also very, very defensive with a decently high armor class and a lot of saves. You don't fail your saves against anything, and they go up even more when I get into Reaper mode. So very powerful character. Been having a lot of fun with it. And so if you want to try to play Vanguard Paladin, now you know kind of what's important and what you need to take. This is the template I would take here, not including, this is just all enhancement points, so there's no racials included. You don't need a racial to play a Vanguard Paladin. It's pretty fun. The first few levels, if you want, Vanguard Paladin really kicks in around level 6. That's when if you want to use a two-hander until 6 and then respec and put your points in, get the stunning shield, and you have the actual shield bash bonuses. It's pretty good, but that's pretty much all there is. I'm going to do some more testing. I have another Vanguard build I want to play. Falconry is really weird because it says, let's use your wisdom to hit and damage with melee and missile weapons up here, which is kind of cool. But for some reason, it propagates onto your shield, which I don't think it's supposed to. So I want to try Falconer Vanguard because it could work. And I want to do that as a Paladin very specifically because I think it would be interesting since Paladins get mana based on their wisdom. So you could play as a fighter, sure, but if you play as a Paladin, you get a whole bunch of mana, and then you could take Mass Frog and Mass Frog stuff, which would be hilarious to be the Frogging Paladin. Again, I don't know if this is a good idea, but we will see, and I'm going to be looking forward to testing that out. It'll be a lot of fun. Anyways, that is all I have for you guys today. If you have any questions, do please let me know about this, and I will make sure I post this. This will be a linked on addendum to the Van Guide. If you haven't seen that, there's a link just below where you can check out the Van Guide and see what I'm actually doing with my fighter. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Have a wonderful day. I will see you all tomorrow.